You know, as teens, we all have questions about faith and religion, but we've all been too scared to ask. Well, here at 1315, we strive to answer those questions so that you can boldly stand up for your faith in everyday scenarios, like over a cup of coffee. So, grab your coffee mugs and let's dive into today's episode. Welcome back for another episode of 1315. I'm so excited that you have decided to join us today. Today we are going to be interviewing Sean McDowell, who is actually one of the people in life that has inspired me to do what I do. And I just can't believe that I'm finally going to get to speak to him since the first time that I heard him speak in person. And that was all the way back in 2012, actually. So I'm really excited about that. I'm going to go ahead and give him a call, and then we're going to go ahead and jump right into this episode for today.
Hey, this is Sean.
Hey, Sean, this is Caleb.
Caleb, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing very well. I'm very excited to hear from you today.
We gonna do this thing?
Absolutely.
All right, let's do it.
Awesome. Well, I just wanted to start off by saying thank you for being I guess, kind of my inspiration into kind of what I do.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, you came and spoke at my church shortly after I gave my life to Christ all the way back in 2012. And it made a huge impact on me. And I was like, oh my goodness, I really need to understand why I believe what I believe. And from that point on, I pursued truth in that way.
I love it, man. That makes my day. Thanks for saying that and for having me on the show. That's really cool.
So when I was trying to decide kind of what I wanted to talk about with you today, I kind of had a general idea, but then I had an incident at school, and it nailed it down for sure.
Okay.
So I'm taking dual enrollment college composition at my school right now. Fun class, get to write. But we had to, one of the assignments was to write a persuasive research paper. And I decided that I wanted to write my persuasive paper on why intelligent design is science.
Okay.
Only problem was we had to get it quote unquote approved by our teacher before we were allowed to even write the essay. So that then followed with her response that intelligent design isn't science. So she was very opposed to the idea.
All right.
So I think I just want to go in and start diving in and talking about that with you as to why intelligent design is science versus what might make someone think that it isn't science.
Okay, good.
In your book, Understanding Intelligent Design, you give about five points that are required for something to be deemed science. Science claims must deal with things that are observable, whereas a designer is unobservable, which may be an objection. And then science cannot appeal to a designer because it leaves the origin of the designer unexplained. Scientific claims must deal with things that are repeatable, but the designer performs unique events. Scientific events must be testable, but design is supposed to be untestable. And then science is limited to studying what is natural, whereas the designer is supposed to be supernatural. What would kind of be your first response what is your general response when that is what you come across with?
When I come across these varieties of different objections?
Yeah.
You mean, let me take a step back here.
All right.
The definition of science is a notoriously difficult one. Really, it's not a question of science. It's a question of the philosophy of science. So a lot of scientists are trained to do science, but they're not trained to think philosophically about their discipline. And another problem is a lot of people, like I don't know which teacher this is or what his or her training is, but people have heard popular claims in the press and they just assume if you believe in God, then you're believing God into the classroom. And I think we got to slow down and say, okay, wait a minute. What actually is science? What is necessary for something to qualify as a science, and what disqualifies it? And that's what we try to do in this chapter, and I've done in conversations, is I'll just say to people, can you give me a definition of what you mean by science? And again, the problem is it's really hard for somebody to give a consistent definition for which there are not counterexamples. And I think every definition somebody comes up with either excludes something that we know is science or tends to include something that is not scientific. That's the difficulty in giving an explicit definition of it. So what we do is we give necessary and sufficient conditions, such as we list in this chapter. So it deals with things that maybe are observable, or it deals with things that are repeatable, etc. And that's what I do in the chapters, walk through and say, basically, any criteria that you give to qualify something as science cannot be used to just necessarily disqualify intelligent design in any consistent fashion.
Gotcha. So I think there's that understanding of that there is something more to science than science itself, that there is more than the physical aspects to science.
Well, science ultimately studies the way the natural world works and operates. But there are forces in science themselves that are not physical. They might have physical effects, but they're not physical themselves. So things like gravity, things like magnetism, things like certain subatomic particles cannot be seen by us, some because they're invisible, some because they're too small, some because our viewing them actually affects them. But science doesn't just deal with things that are observable. It deals with relationships between things that we may be able to observe, but not solely things that are unobservable. In fact, ironically, a lot of people push this idea of the multiverse, which in principle never could be viewed because they'd be outside the realm of our universe, and yet people say it's scientific.
Gotcha. One of the biggest things that that my teacher kind of harped on was this assumption that as soon as I think it's hard to get people into the argument of intelligent design if that necessarily means a Christian God. But intelligent design, the definition of intelligent design doesn't necessarily inherently point to the God of the Bible.
That's exactly right. It doesn't technically point to a God. All it says is that certain things in nature bear the marks of being the result of an intelligent mind, not purely physical forces. That's it. So then the question of who or what is that designer is a subsequent follow-up question. So anybody who really understands intelligent design doesn't say that the flagellum or DNA or the fine-tuning proves the Christian God. They would say it challenges naturalism. It opens the door to who or what is this mind. But no Christian alone would say intelligent design can get us to the God of the Bible. So if she is criticizing that point, she's failing to understand what intelligent design is actually about.
Gotcha. I think that was a big point in the conversation, or lack thereof, was what necessarily is intelligent design. And I think if once we kind of get that it doesn't have to be a winner-take-all, so to speak, when it comes to intelligent design, that if you agree there's an intelligent designer, then you affirm the God of the Bible, which is not the case at all. What would you say?
By the way, there's people who are Hindus, there's Buddhists, there's Muslims, there's people of different religions that embrace intelligent design. So nobody thinks it takes us to God of the Bible. It just takes us beyond laws and chance and natural forces to some mind or intelligence that's responsible for certain features we see in the world. That's it.
When the discussion of intelligent design comes up, what is something that you would say this directly points to intelligent design?
So I'd say a few things. I'd say, one, I think DNA is a very strong argument for a mind. You can look either at the cell and its complexity and its organization and just the way it functions on a level beyond anything human beings can design or create, or DNA specifically bears a digital code. It actually stores information. And every time we're capable of tracing an information back to its source, we always find a mind. A newspaper, you have a journalist. A book, you have an author. A blog, you have a blogger. Well, we look inside DNA and we find more information that's more sophisticated than anything humans can create. It makes a lot of sense to believe that there's a mind behind it as the creator. So DNA is one argument, or you can move outside of biology, which tends to be contentious, into things like physics and cosmology. And we see these certain laws of physics like the cosmological constant or the strong nuclear force that exist on this very narrow range, and the slightest change, and the entire universe becomes inhospitable to complex life. And yet all these different laws have one strange thing in common. They seem to be calibrated right where they would need to be to allow the emergence and sustenance of complex life. Well, that's a kind of cosmic intelligent design that avoids some of the baggage that debates about biology tend to have, because it doesn't even intersect with a question of evolution directly.
So, posing the question between evolution and intelligent design, where does evolution fail when it comes to observing evidence or observing the natural world?
Okay, so that's going to depend on what we mean by evolution. If by evolution we mean change within a kind, what some might call microevolution, that doesn't contradict with intelligent design. If by evolution you mean that we have a common ancestor, that doesn't necessarily contradict with intelligent design. There's a lot of people like Michael Behe who believe that we have a common ancestor, but the mechanism that drove us to exist today was an intelligently designed process. Where evolution, what I would call either neo-Darwinian evolution or naturalistic evolution, comes into contradiction with evolution, is the claim in evolution that a purely material, unguided, blind process can result in all the complexity and diversity of life that we see, can account for things like say DNA or the flagellum. That's where intelligent design says time out. These natural forces are not sufficient to account for these signs of intelligence we see in nature. So evolution fails to account for those. That's really where the intersection is. It's not common descent. It's not change within a kind. It's whether or not purely natural forces alone can explain everything we see in the world. Naturalistic evolution says yes. Intelligent design proponents say no.
Well, I think for the most part, that is pretty much make or break how a person interacts in a classroom setting. So what would be your biggest piece of advice when, I guess, being challenged by a professor or a teacher to, what would your advice be to our audience that is mostly students?
Well, one thing I would say is chances are on questions of intelligent design, your professor has probably not read carefully to even understand what intelligent design is. I'd be surprised if your professor has actually done this. Now, probably most students listening to this have not either. So I'm not telling that to them to puff them up. I'm just saying chances are they actually probably haven't really taken time to read my book or other books on intelligent design and be able to critique it. So they probably have a lot of misunderstandings about it. So I would get Understanding Intelligent Design, or get another book and at least read it and understand it, even if you don't buy it, so you're informed. Second, don't try to get into an argument with your teacher. I mean, if you're in high school, number one, you're almost certainly not going to win. The movie God's Not Dead was a great movie, but it was totally fiction, and that was on a college level. So you're not going to do any good getting into an argument with a professor. Listen, show respect, be the best student, pay attention, but really ask questions. Just ask questions. That's it. To learn, to understand, and things that don't make sense, you ask questions about it. And if a professor tries or a teacher tries to debate you, just say, you know what, I'm not here to debate you on this. I just have some questions I'm trying to make sense of in my own mind. And you be respectful, but you keep pressing the issue, trying to learn truth.
Absolutely. I think that's the biggest thing, is that not only can you get so far with asking questions, but even to the point of our apologetic is just one portion of our faith. And
That's right.
To sacrifice a Christ-like portion to say that we have won an argument or gotten our point across is silly.
I think that's right. I've seen a lot of students, when it gets heated in class, go to their teacher separately and just say, hey, you know what? Can we just talk off the record? Tell me your thoughts on this. How do you come to the conclusion? What advice would you give to someone like me who's trying to make sense of this, but maybe I'm just not fully persuaded by it? Just whatever. Just listen and just talk and build a relationship apart from the classroom, which can feel like a stage sometimes. And I think most teachers really appreciate that. So just treat a teacher the way if you were running a classroom you would want to be treated. And I think if we do that, most teachers, there's a few that are insecure, there's a few that have a really big agenda, but most wannabe good teachers respect dialogue, respect a student who cares, and would be happy to have that conversation if you do it in the right spirit.
So, like Sean said, if you haven't already, go on ahead and pick up a copy of his book, Understanding Intelligent Design, and the subheading is Everything You Need to Know in Plain Language. And what a joy it is. Because some of these resources are great and they are packed with information, but the information's only as good as the information that you understand. So definitely read that, look for other books, and just keep filling your mind with knowledge. Keep sharpening that sword each and every day. So, Sean, is there anything else, any last piece of advice you'd like to give the listeners?
You know what? I'll give you one last advice. I remember when I was in college, I got really rocked in my faith. So I was probably a couple years older than maybe most of you listening. And a professor said to me, he goes, I'm at the point I've done this long enough where I'm rarely surprised by something new. I know there's an answer if I'm willing to research it. And I remember it's probably an 18 or 19-year-old thinking, man, that must be nice. Well, it's crazy. Now, a couple decades later, I still hear new challenges. But for the most part, I have this deep confidence that if I do my homework, there really is an answer because Christianity is true. So I just want to encourage you, if you hear something in high school and college and beyond you're challenged with, you can contact me through my website. If someone answers questions, there's resources that are there. If you're willing to do your homework and look, there's answers for the toughest questions because Christianity really is true. Awesome.
Well, thanks again so much for your time, and just thank you for the impact that you have made on my life. And I just want to let you know that I still have my very first apologetics Bible. I believe it was close to one of the first ones that came out. So kind of very excited that I have one of those.
Well, thanks for having me on. Thanks for being a light to your generation. Keep up the good work.
Alrighty. Have a great rest of your day, Sean.
All right. You got it. Blessings.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, bye.
Well, there you have it, everybody. That is Sean McDowell. One more time, just go make sure that you check out his book, Understanding Intelligent Design. Everything you need to know in plain language. Really is a great book, one that has influenced my life greatly, and I would recommend that you check that out. Also, the Bible that I was referencing is the Students Study Apologetics Bible. I believe it's the CBV or excuse me, CSV. It's the CSV. So definitely go check that out. Utilize that resource. It's got a lot of great little articles in it, and it definitely is just an awesome tool that you can use to sharpen your tools. Go on ahead, if you haven't already, and go on ahead and subscribe to the podcast. That way you never miss out on another episode, because it would be a shame if you missed out on an episode of 1315, because who likes missing episodes of 1315? Not me. Also, be on the lookout as we have some more episodes from me and Benjamin. We will be releasing one. Oh goodness, never mind. Don't listen to my dating. It's never right when I release these podcasts. So it'll come out eventually. Just be on the lookout. But if you're subscribed, you'll never have to worry about missing out. So more incentive to subscribe. Also, go on ahead and check out the blog and our website if you want to know more about Grounds for Faith. That's grounds4faith.com. Got a lot of good resources on there for you, and I would love it if y'all checked that out. Also, on November the 10th, that is going to be at 11 a.m., I want each and every one of you to go to your school, meet at your flagpole, and prayer walk around your school. We're calling this event the Catalyst because corporate prayer is the catalyst for change within a society. We see that time and time again within the New Testament. I hope y'all hold on to that practice of coming together and praying with one another. It has power and it has a huge impact. So definitely go do that. After that first one on November the 10th, it's going to happen every second Saturday of every single month. So we're going to build community with believers in your school, and we're going to make change because of that. Again, thank you for tuning in. Be on the lookout for more episodes. Really appreciate y'all's support. God bless.